Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Jackie.
Good morning, Jacob.
How are you doing?
I'm really well. How are you?
I'm doing good. It seems like you're trying to outcolor me today with your red. I'm wearing orange.
It's not red actually. It may look red on the screen. It's more of a coral colour.
Coral. Okay. Interesting. I might have to look that up on Google later on. That's good. Well, you were telling me before that you've had breakfast, so that means that you should be full of energy today.
Oh, yes. I'm full of energy. Rearing to go.
Do you want to tell the people how healthy your breakfast was?
Oh, really? I had a lovely breakfast. This morning I had herbal tea with some rice cakes. Very healthy. And then literally about half an hour ago, I had some granola.
Okay. I think my breakfast was actually more healthier. It was the classic hot chocolate with plenty of whipped cream on top. So yeah, I don't think you can beat that.
So you're going to be definitely flying high, right? All the sugar.
Of course. Yeah, I just don't want to fall asleep. It was bad idea to have hot chocolate. But so I just want to say welcome to everyone that is currently on. We're gonna obviously we started, but we're gonna kick off in a few moments' time. Just gonna wait for a few more people to join before we kick everything off. But welcome everyone that's joining in. Just want to encourage everyone to also interact with us by putting questions into the chat because we are going to have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar as well. So get your questions in, any remarks, any feedbacks that you have, all well and good, just put them all in the chat. Before we kick off, Jackie, is there anything that you want to say?
Put your questions in. We'll try and answer as many of them as we can, and we're going to have some fun learning.
That's it. So we're gonna go straight into it. For everyone that wants to know, I am Jacob Collins Brown. I'm here on behalf of UK Business Forums. UK Business Forums is the biggest online platform for small and micro businesses in the UK. If you have any questions, any queries, if you're looking for a people that want to help you figure things out, UK Business Forums is the place to be. There's going to be some details and some information in the chat about how you can become a member of UKBF. We've got various networking events taking place over the coming months in London, in Northampton. We've got a fantastic podcast series called UKBF Stories, where we interview some amazing entrepreneurs and some amazing business owners with real life stories who give you the nitty gritty of how they started, where they are, and where they're looking to go. But they don't skip anything. They go through the hard stuff and how they overcame it, because we know that people go through different issues and they give you how it is. So going to encourage people to obviously subscribe to the podcast as well. And this is the first webinar series, and we've got the fantastic Jackie Stewart, a chartered certified accountant and a qualified teacher. And she is a certified trainer on QuickBooks as well. So there's no better way to kick off our first live webinar than to talk about finance and bookkeeping. And just going to hand it over to you, Jackie, to find out a bit about yourself, a bit about your background. And there's a question that I want to just ask. You could have been a chef. You could have been a basketballer. You could have been a rocket scientist. What was your journey like to become an accountant, or how did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, sure. Bit of a funny story there as well, actually, because when I was probably about 10 or so, I used to read a lot of books, loved books and loved going to the library. And I thought I wanted to be a librarian, actually, because I used to like the way they stamped the books really quickly. If you're old enough to know, that's how they take a book, stamp it, move it. And that's what I used to do at home. So I actually thought I was going to be a librarian, but no. So it probably started with school, and as most people will say, we like maths accountants, and I definitely did like maths at school. It's one of my strongest subjects. But it wasn't until I actually did a business diploma at college where one of the syllabuses was actually on accounting, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And I think I fell in love with it because I am quite analytical. Everything needs to fit in a box, and there needs to be a reason why it goes into that box. That's clearly how my mind works. And so accounting was definitely the best thing for me to do. And I literally started off as an accounts assistant working in the city and worked my way up and did my accountancy courses and never really looked back. So it was destined to be, Jacob.
It was destined to be. That's what we like to hear. Were there any? So people nowadays, they look at the likes of Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos or Sir Richard Branson as inspirations to get into, let's say, business. Were there any inspirations for you that you saw, or any figures in your life that you saw that you wanted to emulate or replicate, that kind of urged you to get into accountancy?
No, in a word. Basically, what happened was, as I said, I was working as an accounts assistant, and I actually didn't want to be a qualified accountant because my boss at the time, who was a lady with 3 children, was always stressed. She was like the first to get in, rushing, running home to pick up the kids, and just always looked stressed. And I thought, that's not the life for me. What actually happened was I was doing bookkeeping. I did a bookkeeping course, and I was helping a friend who had a nail salon with her books because I just enjoyed doing it. And then she had to have a meeting with an accountant, and she was terrified to have this meeting. So she asked me if I'd come with her, and just terrified because she was fearful. She didn't know what she didn't know. She didn't know what he was going to ask her, and she didn't want to come across as though she didn't know what she was doing. So I attended with her, and actually the accountant, who has also become a really good friend of mine and a business mentor, he looked at my bookkeeping work, and he was really impressed. He was like, oh my gosh, you keep books really well. I know accountants who don't do it as well as you do. Have you thought about actually becoming a qualified accountant? And that's all it took. He sowed a seed. So I didn't have anybody I necessarily looked up to, but he was responsible definitely for sowing that seed and for my journey, and supported me all through it.
Do you want to give that person a shout out?
Yeah, David, if he's on, I don't know if he's on, he runs a massive practice called Marcus Bishop and Associates. Yeah.
David, we want to say thank you, because if it wasn't for you, Jackie would not be wearing her coral jumper this morning. So thank you, David. So that just leads me on to my first question today. So in layman terms, what is bookkeeping?
Bookkeeping is basically recording. It's the name given to recording the transactions in your business. So every time money's coming into your business and every time you're spending money, it's the process of recording all those figures. And what it does is it leads on to preparing your reports, your financial reports.
So what is the importance of bookkeeping for a sole trader or a limited company?
There's a lot of importance, and it's pretty much the same for both. So as well as you being able to know the numbers in your business, which means you can make decisions in your business. For example, if you're spending a certain amount of money, like I have clients who spend a lot of money on training, for example, and then you're wondering why you don't have any money in your business, unless you've recorded where that money is being spent, it's going to be harder for you to make decisions. Likewise, if you've got money coming in, if you're selling different products, or even if you're selling one thing, you need to know how much you're actually making. Yeah. So bookkeeping does all of that, but it also keeps you compliant, because then, as I said, you have to file your returns, whether you're a sole trader or a limited company, and you need all that information to be able to do that. So as well as you being able to make decisions, it's also part of your being compliant.
Okay, so that sounds like so much. How do people become good at what you just said?
So it really depends. Some people do try and do it themselves, and they can. I'm not saying you can't do your own bookkeeping. So software, there's a lot of software now. When I first started, there wasn't software per se. So you would use spreadsheets or literally write down the amount that's coming in and the amount that you're spending. Now we've got software that can do that, which is absolutely amazing. It makes it so much easier. So you can record it yourself. Some software allows you, every time you spend, to take a picture of what you've spent that on, or take a picture of the receipt, and then you're able to categorize it. So for example, if you spent it on petrol, you can categorize it to travel or petrol, things like that. But it also allows you to raise invoices that you can send directly to your customers as well. And then that's going to record your sales. And also, if you can't do it yourself, if you do have a fear of numbers, and you probably will hear me saying this a lot, I'm an advocate of going to those who do enjoy doing it. So get yourself a bookkeeper or an accountant.
Yeah, yeah, that's really clear. So why are finances so key for any business?
Because how do you know what it's going to take for you to grow if you're not keeping an eye on your finances? How are you going to know how much wages, for example, you can take from your business? So are you just going to take money out of your business and then not have enough money for cash flow purposes, have no money to pay your taxes or to pay your bills? You need to be able to budget. You need to be able to know exactly what's coming in, when it's coming in, and also when you need to pay your suppliers. But of course, you need to know how much you can take for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. There's a popular saying that says, cash is king. But what does that actually mean? With what you just said, what does that actually mean?
Yeah, so cash is king. I've heard that saying. I think it came about when the stock market crashed. Everyone had investments and realised physical cash is what they actually needed. But also, and I like to combine the two. So from a personal financial management perspective, you hear that term a lot, and it's more to do with, if you have cash, then it means you can afford to pay for whatever you need to pay for, because you've got the physical cash, so you're unlikely to use credit cards to get into debt. From a business perspective, it's about knowing your cash flow, having a cash flow. So having a record of when you're going to have physical cash. Because you may have done some work for me, Jacob, and you may have sent me an invoice, but I may not pay that for 2 months. But you're going to have some bills that you're going to have to pay before maybe you get the money from me. How are you going to know when your money's coming in order for you to pay your supplier? So literally a cash flow will determine that for you. When is your money due to come in, and when are you due to have to pay certain expenses, your suppliers or your tax or your wages, whatever it may be. So by keeping a cash flow forecast, you are keeping a record of those transactions. So hopefully you'll always have enough to pay.
So for let's say for startups or for people, sole traders that are rendering a service like a videographer or an editor or a website designer, me, Jacob, have done some work for you, Jackie, and I'm owed, let's say, £300. I send you an invoice, and you've not paid me my invoice for 24 years for whatever reason. And now, how do I now go about chasing you for that? What if I'm scared to approach you to get that money? What surely that's a bad place to be in. What advice would you give to somebody that is owed money, that amount of money for so long?
As you're saying, we're talking about cash being king or cash being key, whatever cash flow. So you can't run your business if you don't have any money, any cash. So you're going to have that confidence to do that. However, if you are just starting and you may not realize that was one of the skills that was necessary, then I would say either ask somebody else to do it for you. So if you have a VA or an admin member of staff, you could get them to chase the clients for you. Or then I would say you really do need to look at yourself and think, well, if I don't have the confidence, you need to visit. That's a mindset change. So why is it that I'm not confident to pick up the phone, to ask somebody? And it's not about being rude, it's about being polite, but because that person may themselves have had issues, but it's about picking up the phone. You provided a service or a product to somebody and just saying, were you happy with that service that I provided? Were you happy with that product? Because I haven't received the payment for my invoice. And it could be something as simple as, oh, it's stuck in their spam box, they didn't receive the invoice, I'll pay it straight away. So it is about being you have to be on it, so you have to make sure you're checking, so you're not leaving it too long to chase, because your cash flow needs to happen. But B, if you really do feel, or it could be a particular client that just rubs you up the wrong way and you feel you don't want to speak to that client, then it may be that you have to ask somebody else to do it for you, a team member.
Okay, and you mentioned some softwares there. This question was actually later on, but I'm just going to bring that in because I feel that's the perfect point to talk about it. What are the particular softwares that would give people the alerts that they're looking for in regards to invoices?
So there's a lot more software and more coming up onto the scene as well, even now as we speak. The two main ones that I work with are QuickBooks. As you know, I'm a certified trainer for QuickBooks, but also Xero is another one as well. There's Free Agent. There's lots of them. And so for most of them, I find they are really good in helping the person who doesn't like to deal with numbers to run their business really easily. So as I said, you can set up alerts. It's called reminders within QuickBooks, where it will automatically send out a reminder to your client customer saying you haven't paid your invoice, please submit your invoice. And it's really easy to do.
So for people starting out in business, they tend to focus on the product or sometimes how we're going to reach our audience. At times, people overlook managing their finances when it comes to starting their business. Why do you think that is?
Because usually it's to do with you're passionate about what it is that you do, right? So if like go back to your videographer example, you're passionate about taking videos, filming, that's where your passion is. That's what you're also really comfortable with doing and what you're at ease with doing. So you tend to do that, what you're most comfortable with first of all, I think. And then there's the other side of it where people do seem to have a fear of their finances and do seem to think that it's really complex. And that could come from they've been told that from somebody else, or they've it's a misconception that that's what it is. And so they rather leave it till last. I find a lot of my clients do that. There's this fear that they don't know what they don't know. And so they don't want to ask because they think they should know it. Right. So it's like, so then they do nothing. So they leave it till last and then most of the times end up getting it wrong. So I think that's what it is. I do see a shift though in the clients that I'm getting now. I'm having a lot of clients coming to me before they even start their business to ask questions to make sure that they are doing things right from the beginning. But I think it's literally about being comfortable. You do what you're more comfortable with rather than what may be a little more uncomfortable.
How does somebody know which tool is right for them when it comes to the software to use, when it comes to the sort of approach or strategy to accounting and bookkeeping? If they're doing it on their own, I'll go from that angle first.
Yeah, so if they're doing it on their own, so most of these softwares, they will give you 30 days to try it out. So you can go in, you can, like Xero, I know do that. QuickBooks does that. So where you can actually sample it first. QuickBooks also does free training for clients. So even if you don't have the software, you can book in for one of their training sessions and they get to tell you all the fantastic stuff that it can do, but you also get to sample it. So you get access to what they call a sample company. So you can try it out for yourself. And I think most of them do that.
Do banks give anything free or to support businesses in this aspect at all?
Yes, some banks do. So I think Barclays, they use sorry, free. There's one called FreeServe or something like that. That if you're got a business account with them, they'll give you a free accounting software tool. NatWest and RBS, I think, have got a deal with Free Agent as well. Sorry, got a bit of a frog in my throat. Sorry. Sorry. Yeah, so they also give you free software. And also another good tool that a lot of these banks are doing, especially these new digital ones that's come up like your Starling Bank, your Monzo, your Tide, is they give you access to what you can create a pot, which is really good for saving for your VAT or your corporation tax, where you can transfer some of this money into the pot, so it's there ready to pay from. So there's a lot more that banks are doing to help small businesses. Yeah.
As an accountant yourself, do you have any particular ones that you favor with, or do you have any recommendations for our audience?
So yeah, again, I am a certified trainer for QuickBooks, so that is my preferred one. I do use Xero as well. QuickBooks is my preferred one, but I haven't tried them all. And it really is just doing your research, like I said, and having a go at some of them. I mean, you'll find if you do go with an accountant, there may be accountants that use all of them, but there's also accountants that have their preferred one. So if people are thinking of having an accountant, it may be best to ask them what one they use first. Plus, some accountants include the software with their services anyway.
Okay, so for go back to myself, Jacob, starting off as a website designer, videographer, invoice has been outstanding for 24 years. That means I can't afford an accountant. What should I do? What can people do if they can't afford an accountant?
It's almost like if your invoice is outstanding for 4 years, it's almost like you can't not afford an accountant. You can't not afford to have an accountant, right? Because that would take the pressure off. But I get what you're saying. So you need to chase it. So you need to be confident to be able to call that client and say, I've sent you an invoice. Like I said, it could have got lost. It could be in spam somewhere. But you need to be, if you're starting off in business, there's certain skills, soft skills that you need to have. And one is to be assertive, right? You can't really be running a business if you're not going to be assertive. To do what you need to do. So if you're doing your videos, you're going to need to talk to a client. The same way that you're going to talk to the client to get your business is the same way that you're going to need to talk to that client if they haven't paid you for any reason. But if you really feel that you can't do that, then another team member, I don't know, you might even have a family member who's quite more assertive than you, can say, can you just call this client for me? Chase them because I really can't face it. But it needs to be done, because without you getting your money in for the services that you've provided, how are you going to make money? How are you going to be able to pay yourself?
Yeah, I can see that we're getting a lot of really good questions coming in whilst we're speaking. But guys, we're going to come to the questions at the end of the session. Just keep them coming in. So from the point you just made, I know that I need to get my mum to chase down the people that owe me for 24 years because she's more stronger than me. So thank you for that advice. So we're going to go into a quick fire round now. So what are the differences between gross and net profit?
Okay, so gross profit is so once you've made your sales, it's what goes into making the sale. So for example, a baker, you cannot sell a cake without ingredients. So you've got the sale of the cake, but you've also got the cost of the ingredients. So it's called, a technical term is cost of sale. So the cost of making the sale. If you sell chairs, it's the cost of the materials for it to become a chair. Once you've taken those costs off, that is your gross profit. Your net profit is everything else after that. So your overheads, your utilities, your administrative costs, your accountancy costs. Once you've taken all those other costs off, then you're left with your net profit.
Your net profit. Okay. When it comes to taking on your first employee, what are some of the things that someone should consider?
So I'd say always be clear about the task that you want them to do. So try not to have any grey areas. So if you're taking on an administrator, for example, don't necessarily expect them to be the person who's going to do some sales for you, right? So be clear on the task. Then once you're clear on the task, you then need to look at how many hours is it going to take them to do that job. So do you need someone full-time, or could it be done part-time? And that's when you get to the budget. So research the wages. So how much is it for that industry, but also make sure that it's not below the minimum wage, for example. Then once you've got those numbers together, you do your budget. Can you actually afford someone full time? Because if you've worked that all out and just say it costs you £2,000 for that staff that you want full time, but you can't quite get there yet, so maybe you can afford £1,000, then maybe you have to look at having them part time and ask them and basically say, I've done that before, and say, I'm probably going to increase your hours later on, but for now it's going to be 2 days a week or something like that. Yeah, but you have to budget and know that you can afford to do that.
Thank you. So many people new to business get caught out with VAT, and they find that they can't afford to pay their first VAT return. How can people be better prepared for this?
So VAT, the threshold is £85,000 within a 12-month period. So if you're hitting £85,000, you're pretty doing okay, right? If you're starting up, if you're just starting up, you're doing pretty okay. So the good thing with VAT, depending on the scheme that you're on, is if you're on, for example, the monthly or the quarterly scheme, is that you do get 5 weeks to pay any tax liability that you may have. So I always say to my clients, from your VAT registered, you need to start to put a portion away into one of those pots, like a savings account, basically. So by the time you come to pay your tax liability, you've got it there. So that's what I suggest that people do. But if you haven't done that, and now you filed your VAT return, and you now know how much you're going to need to pay, you do have that kind of, it's a month and 7 days, they call it, roughly 5 weeks, roughly, period, in order to get out there and sell to make sure you can pay that liability.
So if you're starting up in business and you're not hitting the 85k a year mark, you don't need to worry about VAT.
You don't need to. Some people do voluntarily want to register for VAT. It could be advantageous depending on the industry they're in, but you don't have to. But if you know you're going to hit it, say within the next 30 days or so, then you're supposed to register for VAT. And then you can start calculating it from the date that they tell you you're registered from. So it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody to in terms of what their tax is. And the good thing with the software is it's always calculating. You can literally press a button and it's telling you what your liability is up to that point, so you can make sure you've got that sitting somewhere waiting.
Wow, no, that's very useful. If there's a software that can track everything up until a certain point, that's really helpful. And is this something that QuickBooks also does?
QuickBooks does that, yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. So going back to an earlier question that I asked about, when people start off in business, they don't really focus on their finances. But how much time should someone running a business dedicate to running their accounts?
So it's relative, right? So you could be a service provider, say a coach who has only like 5 transactions a month, maybe, because you've got big clients and you only send out 5 invoices a month. You don't have many expenses. So for you, it may just be 2 hours a month, and like an hour to do your receipts, to upload your receipts into the software, to check over stuff, another hour to look at what's happening, how much sales have you made, send out invoices. But then you could also be a product based business, and you may be in retail, and you could have hundreds of transactions going through in any month. So it just depends on your business. But so for some people, it could be a day, 2 days, a month. And for some people, it could be a couple of hours a month. It's hard to just have a blanket. But what you should do is make sure you definitely are doing it monthly, I would say. Because you need to understand the numbers in order to make good decisions and to know how much to pay yourself, right? So, and even just the bit of paying yourself, taking the money out of the business, it's going to be time. So I'd say definitely, I say to people, if you can dedicate a day, most people don't like to do that. If you can dedicate a day to your finances at least, then that's a good place to start.
This leads me perfectly into another question. So I've started up in business. When should I pay myself? I am going back to the videography role, doing like a wedding. The wedding maybe pays me £1,000. The next week I make a website that pays me £500. The following week I design some flyers which pay me another £500. That's £2,000 in a 3-week period. Can I pay myself that £2,000? When can I pay myself?
So again, it depends. If you're a sole trader, so if you're not a limited company, you can actually take the money out of your business whenever you want to. If you're a limited company, you cannot. There's rules around how you pay yourself. If you're a limited company, you can do it by PAYE, so pay as you earn. So that's where you take a wage. You use a software, you get a pay slip, just as someone who is employed. There's also dividends. It's quite complex. I'm not going to go into the details for all of that now, but dividends is another way you can pay yourself. But I would say it all starts with the budget. I always say you have to have a budget. You have to start with that and your cash flow forecast. So you may have made £2,000, but you may also have to pay out £500 or £1,000 within the next 30 days. So only by forecasting and looking at your numbers for the future will you know. And say, for example, if you know you're doing websites, you're doing 2 websites a month, then it may be, okay, so for the next year, I can pay myself £500 a month. But it may be that you have a really good month or sales goes up. Because you're in charge, it means that you can up how much you're taking out. I always say budget, cash flow forecast. And if you don't know how to do those yourself, that is definitely worth you paying somebody to help you do that. Definitely. Even if it's just for that alone. So you can see and work out how much, because that's where a lot of people get into trouble. So you may take, like you said, you may take £1,000, £2,000 this month because you did really well, which is fine. Like I said, as long as you can pay your expenses and you've put away your tax. And And next month you may not have done so well, or you may have gone away for 30 days, whatever. So you're not going to pay yourself the same amount. So it doesn't have to be the same every month. It depends on how much your outgoings are as well.
Yeah, there's a video that we did a few, I think at some point last year. Richard Osborne, the founder of UK Business Forums, there's a video that he and the statement of the video was, all the money is not your money.
Absolutely.
And what he was basically saying was that everything that comes in, there is something that you have to pay for. Like you just said, it could be VAT, it could be this, it could be that. So I remember when I first tried to start a business, and the videographer analogy I keep using was actually myself.
Okay.
Although I didn't
I guessed
wait
it
24
was.
years. Yeah, I didn't wait 24 years for an invoice to be paid. I just egged their house. I didn't do that. I thought that you could literally take everything that you were making until the following year, you have to make a tax return, or you have to do this, and you have to do. I'm thinking, what does this mean? I didn't know anything about this. I thought whatever is coming in, I can go and buy KFC with, or I can go and book a holiday with. So yeah,
And that's why I always say to people, even if you don't engage an accountant initially, because like you said, some people, they may not really be making much money in. And sometimes what people think they have to pay an accountant isn't necessarily as big a cost as people think as well. But at least if you have a consultation with one, most accountants may do a free 15-minute, half an hour consultation. That might be all you need for them to tell you what you should be doing. But even if you have to pay for an hour's consultation, and even if you're not going to engage them as an accountant, just because before you start up, so you know what's required of you, so then you can plan, it's much better than not doing that and then having to pay a lot of fines to HMRC. I've had a lot of that recently, where people have started businesses over COVID period, especially, and just didn't know what they were supposed to do. So never ever filed a return, and woof, all of a sudden they're getting these letters, and some people having to pay £800, £1,000 fine where they didn't have to do that, right?
So another question that just came off the back of what you just said. We know that during the pandemic phase, a lot of banks were offering businesses loans. If there was a business who took a loan within that period, what advice or what's the best way would you give to a person starting up in business who just took a loan in order to pay that back?
So if I'm understanding you correctly, so they would have taken a loan out during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And now they need to pay it back, or they're taking another loan to pay that loan off? Sorry.
So two questions there. How did they basically pay that off? If they're
So again, it's down to your budget. So if you've taken a loan out, you know what your monthly repayments are going to be. So when you're getting that £2,000 in, as you said, for doing that website or whatever, you know that £100 of that has to go to the bank loan. You're only going to know that if you're using software and you've plugged those figures in there, because when you use accounting software, especially cloud software, it connects to your bank account. So all the transactions that are going through your bank account can flow into the software, and you get to categorize it. So if your bank loan is going out every month, this is where you get to make the decisions and how you know how much to pay yourself. You'll see the direct debits that are coming out of your business account. You'll see what's coming into your business account and what's left, right? Which is why you can't just take whatever sale you've made. You can't just take all of that money, because you have to pay back your bank loan. You have to pay back whatever it is that you need to pay back. But you'll know what those figures are. So you plug it into your budget, which you can do in software as well. So you don't even need to know how to use spreadsheets.
This may be another question related to this. What if someone can't afford to pay that loan back?
Then they need to be having a conversation with the bank. They need to have a conversation with the bank.
Just straight up have a conversation with the bank.
Don't bury your head in the sand if it's got to a point, because you can probably come to an arrangement with the bank. Most suppliers, and this is from my personal financial background, most suppliers, 90%, 80 to 90% of the time, are more happy to come to an arrangement with you rather than if you just default and not say anything. So I would say have a conversation with them.
Okay, that's great to know. This goes on to my last quick fire round question. What are the annual financial obligations for any business?
So if you're a sole trader, you register for self-assessment and you have to complete your self-assessment form and pay any taxes due by the 31st of January of every year. It runs for the financial tax year, which is from the 6th of April to the 5th of April. So that's your recording period. So from the 6th of April to the 5th of April of every year, you then complete your self-assessment, and by the following 31st of January, you need to submit that self-assessment and pay anything due. For a limited company, it's slightly different because it depends on the dates that you incorporated the business. So if you incorporated the business today, October, you will have what they call a financial year end of the end of October. So then your recording would be from the 1st of from the 1st of September to the 31st of October. So that would be your accounting year. And then you also have to file returns. You have to file your corporation tax return, CT600 is the technical term for it, or your annual accounts, if for want of a better word. So you have to file those annually. So once your accounting period is ended, so after, if we're using the October analogy, once the 31st of October is finished, then you get to file that return and you get 9 months and 1 day to pay any tax liability. You also have to do your confirmation statement as a limited company with Companies House, which you file annually again, and it's usually 12 months after the day you incorporated the business, or 12 months after the date you last filed that confirmation statement, and you pay £13 every year for that as well. So everything's annually. However, Making Tax Digital, which I'm not really going to go into much detail about, is coming in. It's already in for VAT registered companies, but for example, sole traders, it's going to be coming in, I think it's 2024. And they're looking at a quarterly filing system, and where you are going to have to use software to file your returns. So you'll still do one main annual one, but you're going to do quarterly ones as well. So anyone who's not using software yet, I'd say definitely become familiar with software. And while I'm saying that, only because I've picked up a question, I know we're going to do those afterwards, but I've literally just picked up a question who says, do you have to have accounting knowledge to successfully use accounting software? And I'd say no, you don't have to have accounting knowledge to use the software, but in order to file your returns, if you're definitely a limited company, accounting knowledge is definitely necessary, but not to use the actual software.
Well, that question was from Susan. So that leads us on to the Q&As now. Hopefully that answers your question there, Susan. There's a question here from Deborah Wald that says, I'm at the start and I have a personal accountant, or having a personal account, and I'm using the business at the Mo. Is that okay, or do I have to have a business account? Most seem to charge, and I prefer not to have to pay while I'm at the startup stage.
Yeah, so a lot of people do that. A lot of people use their personal account. I always say keep it separate. Keep your personal and your business account separate. There are lots of banks now that do not charge you. Starling is one off the top of my head. You can set up a business account with Starling where you don't have to pay any charges. Some software, if you connect your account to the software, some softwares, it's a requirement that it's a business account, business bank account. So, but there are definitely, I'd say just look at some that are free, that don't offer any charges, but you want to keep it separate. It's better for your own personal finances that you don't confuse the two anyway.
That's that. Yeah. Deborah said that. Yeah. P.S. The personal account I'm using for business is only for business. It's not mixed with my personal stuff.
Oh, right. So it's a separate personal account. But I still would say, because you're going to need to start using software, and some software won't allow you to connect to a personal account. It has to be a business account. So.
Hopefully that answers your question, Deborah. Let us know in the chat if that does. If you have anything else, just let us know. There is a question here from Patricia. What tools or software do I need to make finance or the bookkeeping process easier?
You may have missed that at the beginning. So there's a few. There's QuickBooks, there's Xero, there's Free Agents, there's FreshBooks. There's so many. If you literally just Google in accounting software, it will come up with a lot of them. But the best thing to do is either speak to an accountant, and I don't mean you have to take that accountant on for maybe some suggestions that some might be more beneficial for the type of business that you're in, or if you want to just go through a few of them, and you can, like I said, you can get most of them for 30 days free anyway, and see which one kind of relates to you and your business more. So you can do that, but there's quite a few of them out there now.
And if you've probably heard, Jackie's favorite of all time is QuickBooks, because she's a certified trainer. So yeah.
And they do free training.
And they do free training. A question here from Jude. If you've registered a limited company in the UK, but has not started any business in the first year, are you required to pay any taxes or any other liabilities?
So no, you won't have to pay any taxes, Jude, but you do still need to complete your annual account return, your CT 600. But what you will be doing, you'll be filing as a dormant company, so it hasn't traded yet. So you won't have to pay any taxes, but you still need to complete the form. Otherwise, you could find yourself with a fine.
Hopefully you heard that, Jude. Let us know in the comments if that's answered your question. We've got another question here from Susan. Do you have any advice of how to make the work between business owner and accountant easier?
How to make the work easier? So I'm not quite sure what you mean, but I'll give a few answers to what I think you mean. So
I think they mean from a perspective of
relationship,
communication, relationship.
Yeah. So look, so accountants, there is this kind of misconception that accountants are very boring and we're complex people, and some accountants have not made. Yeah, they play up to that. I've been around a long time. I've worked in this city with many different types of accountants, and yeah. So it's about finding one that you like. It's a bit like when they say go to different people and find one that speaks your language. I guess because of my teaching background as well, I like to simplify things, and I don't like to use accounting language when I'm talking to certain clients. And that's not to belittle anybody, but it's just because they don't need to know the jargon, right? So you just want to know what you need and what you don't need. So if you're not getting that, then just find somebody else. But also, if you're talking from a working perspective, with the software, it means you have access to it and your accountant has access to it at the same time. So you could both be on a call and you could be asking a question about a particular thing, and they'll be able to see exactly what you're asking about. Cloud software has been a total game changer. So if it's more of a work thing, then that's what you can do. If it's a relationship thing, there's many accountants out there who will work how you want them to work, basically, or will at least speak a language that you understand. Trying to be
Susan also said so it was about like the relationship and communication, but also about how to get filings done.
Yeah, so what I say to all my clients and to everybody that I come into contact with, that you are the owner of your business, not your accountant. So the responsibility lies with you. So you need to know when your filing dates are. And if you have an accountant and your filing date has come up or it's getting close, you need to be saying to your accountant, have you filed my returns, or are you sending me my reports to file the returns? Because accountants are people, things happen. I've heard stories of, accountants have gone missing, for example. So the onus lies with you. So you should be at least wanting your accountant to be checking in with you, depending again on your type of business, quarterly, monthly meetings or whatever, but they definitely need to be accessible. If they're not accessible, if you're not happy, if you're asking certain questions, or you don't even understand what's happening in your business, then you need to change accountant.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's a bit.
We get a bad name, and I'm not happy about it. Yeah, we're not all
got
like
the sword
that.
out defending accountants.
But it's true. It's like anything, right? Yeah. Relationship is how you get on with the person who's in front of you. So yeah.
Yeah. No, that is true. That is true. You have to get along with them. From Patricia, in relation to cash flow, how is effective bookkeeping able to help with improving our cash flow?
Because then you'll know your numbers, you'll know what numbers you're dealing with. So If your bookkeeping is up to date, so if you are categorizing where you have spent your money, and also it's not just about where you've spent your money. Some people offer different services. So the example you gave before, Jacob, if you're doing videos and you're also doing websites, at some point you're going to want to know which one's making you the most money, or if you're actually making a loss from one of them, right? If you have to buy lots of equipment, for example, for the video, but what you're charging is not enough for your time because you've got to pay yourself as well. Bookkeeping helps with all of that, which then leads into the cash flow forecast. So if I know that I've raised an invoice today and that my terms are, say, 30 days, then I'm going to put in my cash flow that in 30 days' time, I'm expecting to get that particular amount of money. So that's, I hope that answers your question, Patricia. So that's, if your bookkeeping is up to date and you're doing it correctly, then it means that your cash flow is going to be easier to manage.
I hope that answers the question. We have a question here from, oh, sorry if I get this wrong. I think it's the name of a company actually. Besena. Is there a formal format for an invoice to a client? I have just started my limited company which deals with art commissions.
So your invoice, in terms of if there's a formal format, if you're raising it yourself, so you're just using Word or whatever, I mean, you need to have things like your company details on there, invoice number, the date, who the invoice is to, and then also the service that you're providing for them. That's what you need to have on your invoice. In terms of if it's a formal format, no, as long as those details are all on there. It doesn't matter which format you do it in, which deals with a limited company, which deals with art commissions. So that might be a service. So again, you could put down commissions received or something and send the invoice out. It's more to do, it's not so much to do with the invoice, as long as it has those legal things down. So your company address, as I said, and so forth. It's more to do with how you're going to categorize it at the bookkeeping stage. So I could raise an invoice that covers lots of different things that I do. Back to Jacob's example, he could have done a website for someone, done a video to go on their website, given a talk, I don't know. He could send that one invoice out for those 3 different services. But when it comes to the bookkeeping, how we categorize it, that's what's key. I hope that answers your question. If you're using software, the invoices are there. You've got different formats, templates that you can use. And that's just a matter of preference. So you can choose which style you use. But again, it pretty much has the same information on there.
I think that was quite comprehensive. Makes sense. Thank you. I will have a look at this software. And even things like, I know this may seem very, very basic. Even things like Canva. Canva's got a lot of templates for invoices. You can remove what people are putting and you can just slot in your company name, the address that you're sending it to, your email, their email, just things like that. So even things like Canva could be.
Yeah, I think when I first started out many, many moons ago, I was using Word. I was literally just put a table in Word and I would just use a Word document to send it out. Yeah.
Yep. That's basically it. If there are any more questions, you guys go ahead. We just have a few more minutes left before we close for the morning. But I just want to say thank you so much for your knowledge, for your time this morning, Jackie. It's been very concise with everything that you've said. We're going to put a few details in the chat about how people can get in touch with Jackie. It's going to go down in 3, 2, 1. There we go, right there. And I definitely encourage people to get in touch with Jackie. Extremely knowledgeable. Otherwise, she won't be wearing that coral jumper this
It is actually a dress. You got it wrong. It's a dress, Jacob. It's not a
dress.
jumper.
Oh, I should have stuck with my guns.
You should have stuck with
it. But yeah, Jackie does have a power hour, which encourage people to just literally jump all over that. Very, very knowledgeable. And also, like we said, for people that may not have heard this, we are UK Business Forums. the biggest online community of small and micro business owners in the UK. There's about almost 600,000, I think it's more than that now, 600,000 people across the world, but we're based in the UK, that are in our community. If you have any queries, any questions about starting up in business, you're running a business, you may be struggling, how to look for clients, how to market, this community is there to assist you to get from where you are to where you want to be. We've got networking events in London, in Northampton, on a monthly basis. And we're going to have there's some information there about how you join UKBF. Also have a great podcast series about business owners who have real life stories, not just the stories that you see in social media about how people became trillionaires and they skip out how many days they didn't have dinner. Then there's actually real genuine stories about people who've gone through stuff and how they overcame those things. So I definitely encourage everyone to check out UKBF Stories podcast, hosted by Richard Osborne. I know he's going to be happy because I gave him a shout out. So definitely check that out. And if there's, I think there's
another question
from Deborah.
Yeah.
So when you're doing a sole trader and limited company accounts, and there are costs that are split, say subscriptions, etc., should you literally split where they go? And further, you recommended monthly sessions, but is it also good to just shove in cost on software or Excel as soon as you're paid for something?
Yeah, really good question. So in terms of splitting transactions, so if you've paid for something and it goes to different categories, I'm assuming this is what you mean. So for example, let's say you went to a supplier and you bought some stationery, but you also bought some stock items. I think that's what you mean, Deborah. Yes, you should split those categories, because the more information you have about where your money is being spent is the better for you. Also, some of that may be part of the gross profit thing that we talked about earlier. So if you're buying stock, for example, or the cost that goes into that, it may form part of your gross profit as a part of your net profit. So you should split transactions, and software again makes this really easy to do. So once the cost has come into the QuickBooks, for example, I'm using QuickBooks, once the cost has come through from your bank account, you have the option to split it and to say how much should be categorized to where, so you can apportion the costs. And yes, when I spoke about the monthly, a minimum of looking at your transactions monthly, and again, it's in proportion to how many transactions you have. That's more of a business thing. So looking at your business on a whole, so your cash flow forecast, your budgets, to see that you're on track. But you're absolutely right. So if, for example, you're buying stuff every day, so like just a quick example, I have some taxi drivers. And so as soon as they buy petrol, for example, I get them to take a picture of that receipt, because it goes straight into the software. So then it's already there, rather than the good old days when I first started off many, many moons ago, and people would turn up with a bag full of receipts or a biscuit tin. No, you should absolutely be dealing with those costs as soon as you can. So if they've emailed you a receipt, get it straight into the software. It's like a 5-second job. But the monthly sessions I meant was kind of looking at your whole of the finances on a whole for your business. But yeah, very good question.
Very good question.
Yeah,
Very
or
good
Excel.
question.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, if you haven't got software.
I hope that answers your question, Deborah. Just let us know in the chat if that does. If you have anything else, let us know. In closing, Jackie, is there anything that you'd want to share before we close out for this morning?
So yeah, definitely I would say so look, when you're starting, it's even including your startup costs. A lot of people, I don't know how many of you have already started, but a lot of people don't think about what they're going to need to pay. So you need to have your startup costs. What do you need to pay out initially? And if you can include a bookkeeper, accountant, or consultant sessions in that, I think it's definitely worth the money to set you off straight. Also, definitely you should now be looking at software, because like I said, 2024 is when it goes live, I believe. It should have happened already, but the pandemic put it back. So start getting familiar with software. So if you're someone who's a bit fearful with software, start playing around with it from now, so at least you're comfortable before it actually goes live.
That's good. That's good. Well, I just want to thank Jackie so much for being with us this morning. I want to thank every single person that's also joined us this morning. In 2 weeks' time, we have another webinar with a lady called Hannah Brady, who's an expert in branding and marketing. People start up in business, people have a product they want to sell, but they don't know how to engage an audience or get people to purchase off them. Branding and marketing is pivotal, especially in the social media generation with TikToks, the accessibility of LinkedIn, the importance of it for a business. Branding and marketing is extremely, extremely important. And even knowing how to effectively use email marketing as well. Hannah Brady is going to be here with us in person to talk about branding and marketing. So hopefully you guys can be also joining us in that as well. We're going to have some more information about Jackie as well in the follow-up emails, which you should all receive at some point today and this week as well. And hopefully, if you guys are in London, if you guys are in Northampton, we'd love to meet you in person at one of our live networking events. We have an event in Northampton on the 12th of October. We have one the following week. Let me just quickly double check the date so that I don't mess that up. I think it's the 19th of October at the Dilly Hotel in Piccadilly as well. So that's going to be fantastic. It's going to be great. We're expecting quite a lot of people to be there for our in-person networking event as well. So great chance to come on down, meet business owners, meet people who are starting up, people that are already established as well. I remember at our last, one of our last events, we had a former UKBF member called Dwayne Jackson, who's actually the founder of Cashflow, actually. Dwayne actually went on to, he started the business, came onto UKBF, asked some questions about how this product can be improved and what people think about the product. Members of UKBF gave him real advice. Not sometimes the advice that you may want to hear is quite hard, so it's about how you take it, but they gave him real advice. Some of that advice was used to basically help take that business and that product to where it is today. Dwayne went on to sell that business for 20 million pounds, and he's gone on to do so much more. Dwayne was actually at one of our in-person events in London a few months ago, and people loved it. He gave time answering a lot of questions. So these events are really, really useful to engage with people who are doing it. So we encourage you guys to come down to one of our in-person networking events in London or Northampton. So yeah, have a fantastic day, guys. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you.
Love
Thanks
the
for having
dress.
me.
Thank you so much. Have a great day, guys. See you guys later.